Hello, hello, and welcome to the Their Voices Matter series. This series was created to give voice to those who you normally don't hear from and just to create a space to amplify those voices. So, for the month of March, we have been focusing on the journeys of special education educators. I'm a former special education educator, so I've enjoyed this the month of March so much, meeting with fellow professionals in the field of special education. And so, without further ado, I'm going to welcome today's guest. I'm so excited to have her. Her name is Miss Alicia Clayton. So, welcome, Alicia.
Hi, how are you?
So, go ahead and tell people who you are, where you are from, and what it is and what you do.
Okay, so I'm Alicia Clayton. I am from the city of Portsmouth, Virginia, but currently live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I've been in special education for 10 years. I recently came out. Right now, I'm a co founder of a nonprofit called The Village and looking to get into cybersecurity.
Oh, okay. The village. I like that. I like that. So, what does the village do? What
So
is the organization?
basically, in a nutshell, the village is here to educate everyone. So my website is www.educatethevillage.com, and our goal is to make sure um, unreached areas get the information and education they need to be sustainable and regardless of the area. So right now, I currently teach craft classes at the Portsmouth Public Library, trying to make sure individuals that have low income or at the poverty line um, tap into their creative side and also make an income doing that. We also offer tutoring to K through 12 students, college students, those taking the ASVAB and adult literacy. So that's just a few things that we do.
All right. And you said www.thevillage.com.
EducateTheVillage.com.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to put that on the screen. Educatethevillage.com. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So as always, one of my how we start off this series is how did you get involved in special education? Like what led you to this this wonderful field of special education?
So my mom is a special ed teacher. She was a nurse for many years, and then she went back to school at a late age and got into human service counseling and special ed. And she entered into the public school system, and I used to go to her class and volunteer. And that's when I noticed like something is off. Like what is going on and why are we providing these like quote unquote crappy services to these kids? They should be getting the same services as everyone else. And that's what made me get into the field of special ed.
Okay. Okay, that was nice. You had a connection there from your mom. So, um, would you say Sped chose you or would you say you chose it?
I think Sped chose me. Now, servicing, um, servicing the community, I think that chose me. How I did that, yeah, I chose it.
Okay, but you said Sped chose you. And what would you say? How do you know that like Sped chose you?
No, I said I chose
Oh,
Sped.
you chose Spad. Okay, I want to say you're like the first one in the whole series where it's like you chose Spad. So what made you choose Spad? Because this is a very, I want to say at times daunting, um, unapologetic, like thankless field. So what made you choose it?
A lot of factors. Let's talk about the um when I walked into my mom class and I was volunteering and I was just like, this can't be. We can't continue to put kids out into society and they're not prepared,
Mhm.
regardless of their educational level, their cognitive level. We have to do something about it. And I was that person that was going to do something about it until I got into the school system. And then I realized this is why things are the way they are.
You realized it was a little bit bigger than what you expected.
It was, yeah, and I did not think the educational field was that cutthroat. I thought it was all about the kids,
Mm,
making sure they got what they needed to be successful, and it is far from that.
yes,
Oh,
it's
maybe I was young, I was naive. I'm
mhm.
not into politics. I'm not into, things like that. So when I went in, I was just like, whoa. And I was very successful as a teacher. Like the kids, when I tell you they love me, I love them. The teachers, they love me, but it was just that political aspect that I couldn't get with.
Yeah, it's like it's never the students really. It's and even like, every place you may have colleagues, you don't get along with everybody, but it's never really that. It's always bigger than your classroom and the school. It's beyond that. It's like the people at the top, and you're just like, I can't do with this no more. So speaking on that, like what would you say has been the biggest challenge that you faced when you were still a special education educator? You may be tackling that now, or you may have overcome it. Like, what's been that obstacle for you?
So my biggest challenge was dealing with leadership
Hmm.
and my inability to view my job as just a job.
Can you go in a little bit more detail with that?
So a lot of people are successful in this field, I believe, because they go to work because it's a job. I need to pay my bills. I need something to do, regardless of the reason. I'm going in there. I have a clear focus. I'm not going to do more than I need to do. I'm not going to give more than I need to give. And I'm going to come out of there at 4 o'clock, regardless, or 5 o'clock, whatever the time may be. But I was that person that was going to change the school system. So I was going to give anything and everything it took for that to happen, whether it was making sure parents had my phone number to call me when their lights went out, or providing tutoring after school, regardless if I had 4 kids at home, or allowing kids to come into my class on planning breaks that weren't sped to just to talk.
Mm.
I was that teacher. So they would call me the mom of the school.
So you were the teacher that went above and beyond. And that was so. How did that become an obstacle? When you said, I know you said leadership was the obstacle for you. So did you going above and beyond kind of cause friction with leadership?
No,
Did they
they
have a problem with?
one thing about
Okay.
leadership, they're gonna allow you to kill yourself. They will allow you
Mhm.
to burn yourself out. They really don't care. At the end of the day, as long as you do your job and then make
Mm,
their job easier, they really don't care. So what happened was I was going above and beyond, and everyone was appreciative, even going above and beyond for the teachers. However, when it came down to me doing my job, that's when the stress level went up. So I can have kids in my class talking about, the death of their mother or whatever it may be, but then I need to turn around and do knockout 20 IEP. You get what I'm saying?
mm,
So
mhm,
that's the issue. Or kids that got in a fight and they wanted me to do conflict mediation. But yet I still have these other things that I need to get done. So that was one of the issues. The other issues, as far as leadership is concerned, is you see what the problem is. You see the disconnect. And I feel like you didn't do anything about it. And they continue to not do anything about it. Like, why are we sending high school students, off into the world and they still can't read?
mm,
But you picked that up in middle school. Like you saw that.
mhm.
So
So
yeah.
it's you felt like, okay, you see the problems. You see these fires out here, but you're not trying to put these fires out. You're
Mm-mm.
adding to the fire, actually, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's when I realized, okay, this is that political aspect. Their job is not to put out the fires. Their job is to get you from kindergarten to 12th grade, regardless of how that looks.
Mm, I can understand that. I can understand that. And then also you going above and beyond, and then also like, wait, I still got to do this. I still got IEP meetings to do. I still got to teach these kids on top of everything else that I have to do. Because sometimes, You and I both know sometimes students don't want to talk to their actual teacher they may have. They want to talk to somebody else that they
If
trust.
ever want to talk, you know what I mean? Like it's just it's all about building relationships. And I don't know if it's a gift, I don't know what it is, but from teachers to students, like they come to me, and yeah, sometimes it can be problematic.
Yeah, and it's like I think sometimes like that step is skipped. Like you definitely have to build rapport with students. Like even just passing the hallway, I always say good morning to everybody, even though I may not be your teacher. Like I'm still saying good morning. How are you? And then it gets to the point when they see me, I'm like, oh hey Miss Bessie. I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't know I didn't know you knew my name, but hey, or whatever. And I can remember times where well, this kid was on my caseload, but he's having a meltdown, but he just want to talk to me. And I'm like, okay, I can talk to you for about 20 minutes, but I got to get back to class. And it's like, he don't want to talk to nobody else. He just want to talk to me. And I'm like, I still have to teach. And I'm like, I remember it got to one point I said, listen, I don't want you to think like I'm not listening anymore, but you do understand I have to get back to class. If you want to sit here and just calm yourself down, you're more than welcome to. And when you're ready, you can go to the bathroom, clean your face, and go back to class. And I would put like the hall pass on the table that I signed it, and like, because I still have, a class to teach, but
Right,
I can imagine that just being overwhelming on top of you trying to support your students the best way you can because you see what their needs are and you're trying to make them more prepared when they leave.
right.
They have some type of quality of life. So, with that being said, what would you say are improvements that need to be made to special education?
First things first would be training and professional development. The teachers now are not equipped. Just educationally, academically, they're not equipped. They're coming into this school system regardless of their race or their background, and just thinking they're going to walk into a classroom and teach. And that is not the case. So I went to Regent University, and when I tell you Regent did well, they taught me academically, and then when I went into my internship, they made sure they put me in schools with teachers that knew what they were doing. So I had adequate training, and that's why when I went into my first year, they made me instructional leader because I knew what I was doing before I even walked in there. That's not happening now. So that's one of the things. Another thing would probably be cultural competence.
Mm.
Um, that's lacking within our classrooms.
And
And
when you
then
say cultural competence, what do you mean? Just for any viewers who are not clear on that.
just to make sure you know who you are dealing with and their background, and making sure you can relate to that. I think we are not being intentional about the placement of children and teachers.
Mm.
Teachers, we're gonna throw them into this classroom, and
Got
you're
a teacher. I can say I got a teacher for the room.
yeah, you're gonna make this happen, regardless if this teacher has never like dealt with a kid who's dealt with some serious trauma or anything. So I think that's one of the things that we lack. And then another thing would probably be just the curriculum and the goals we have for our kids.
Hmm.
um yeah, the way we go about doing that.
Yeah, I have to definitely agree with you with your improvement you would like to see. That kind of is what pushed me into going into consulting because I'm like, as a sped teacher, I'm like, I didn't get any training. Like my background was in special education. My little sister has a intellectual disability that sparked my interest. And I was blessed enough to have, seasoned teachers who knew what they were doing and who were able to take me under their wing, which everyone is not willing to do.
Nope.
So I have my background, but then it's like, okay, I want to learn more, but you're pushing me into my content PD, which is fine. I'm learning strategies and things like that. But I'm like, what about the stuff that I have to do as a sped teacher? Like, where is that at? And I'm just like, it's not enough. And it's all over the country. I'm like, it's like the same thing. You're getting pushed into your content, and it's like, well, where do I get the support and training to learn more about progress monitoring? And I'm actually given the time to do it in a PD, you know what I mean? And how to just learning more about SPED laws and things. And then the
That's
code.
crazy because like they get in my mind, they get a lot of money. So
They
I'm
do.
a little confused about
Yeah.
like
Yes, and it's like, wait a second, like, where are you putting that money at? Because I'm like, it's not going to us. It's not. And I want to say every district that I've been in, or network I've been in, it's like, well, where is the training for special education teachers? Like for us. Yeah.
so like cliche almost. Like you hear the same thing over and over again. I know the last year I was teaching, when we had pre-service. I went to the basic pre-service at my school, but as far as SPED was concerned, I didn't go. I was
Hmm.
like, I've heard this for 10 years. Why am
Hmm.
I wasting my
It's
time?
like, let's put part 2 or the part 3 or the part 4. Like, where is that? And then even coaching, it's like, I remember there was a coach, but she was assigned to so many schools. I'm like, she can't really get to know me and support me.
So and yet, so they have coordinators. We had coaches and they did away with them, but that at the end of the day, it didn't make a difference. Like you can't come coach for one day for 2 hours.
And I
That's
don't see you again for a couple months. Like
I
it's
say that I'm struggling. I have teachers right now that call me that I used to work with. Clayton, can you help me write this IEP? Clayton, what do I do for this? And I don't mind helping at all because I know the help is not there.
Mhm.
And as far as like scheduling their IEPs and make sure you're not writing IEPs in April and May. It's simple stuff
Mhm.
that they won't do.
And then like and some like I was always trained to like if a student's IEP was done over the summer, I remember I was trained move it up to June, May or June, have the parent come in because no one's there over the summer. And I remember when I switched where I was working and they said, oh no, it has to wait to the next year. I said, what do you mean wait to the next year? I said, no, we move it up. I said, we call parents, let them know, like, listen, this is falling over the summer. We're moving it up to June. And they was like, well, no, we only do one meeting a year. And I'm like, what? Where I don't come from that. I'm just like, oh, we needed to amend something. We did. We talked to the parent, got permission, or if we needed to do a whole new IEP, we did. So I'm just like, what? And it's like you really learn how certain cities, everyone does their own. Sometimes I'm not gonna say everyone does their own thing, but that's what it feels like. Everyone does like their own thing. And it's like,
Crazy because at the end of the day, why can't the IEP be universal? Like
and then
we
people got their preferences on how they want you to write it. And I'm
all
just like,
that,
wait a second.
and that's why people are so confused about what to put. And then you look at some of these IEPs. When I look at some of them, I'm like, what is this?
Mhm.
Like, what are you supposed to do with this?
Like I know in some places they want you to write it like a narrative. Some places, like where I came from, it was more of, okay, go subject by subject. How are they functioning in this subject? Go to the next subject. And that's how I've always written IP. So that way parents can see, you can see how your child is functioning in each subject. So that way you can kind of clearly see, oh, this is the subject they're, maybe struggling or whatever. And I am working with a psychologist like, oh, it needs to be written as a narrative. I'm like, that sounds like a preference more of instead of just like, oh, this is the way it has to be. And I'm just like, okay, you go through that. And then the other piece you spoke to, understanding who you are teaching. And it's like, you have to have some type of connection with the population that you're serving. Um, I want to say, even when I worked in the suburbs, I was not born and raised in the suburbs at all. I'm from the city, born and raised in the city, in the hood. That's where I'm from, North Philly. Wasn't born and raised in the suburbs, but I built a rapport with the kids. They had, they knew I was from Philadelphia. They didn't know where at in Philadelphia I was from, but I built a rapport with them. Like there were certain shows, like they're like, "Oh, you watch that, Miss Fisher?" I'm like, "Yes." Don't you watch that too? Building rapport, listening to them, speaking with them. You know what I mean? You can, wherever you are, you can build a rapport with kids. And I never forget, it was something, the superintendent, they were holding like these meetings if you were interested in going into leadership. And he was honest. He had to say, like, one of the schools he was a previous superintendent for, he said, I had to leave because I couldn't connect with the population. And he
Mm.
said it wasn't like oh, I didn't like them or anything like that. He said, it's just how I was reared and what I do. He said, it's not appropriate. He said, listen, all my cars are Mercedes. I've always driven Mercedes. It's not appropriate for me to drive in the community in a Mercedes.
And that's maturity, because at the end of the day, like,
Right. Because he was
no,
just like, how does that look? Me riding through their community in a Mercedes. I'm in my Mercedes. And not saying that they can't ever get one, but he said because it was a low socioeconomic population, he was a superintendent over that district. He said it didn't look appropriate for me to do that. And I understood what he meant, and I was like, I know they probably appreciate that, like, because I know they probably, I know exactly what their thoughts would be if they saw you riding in their community and
yeah,
in your car or whatever, and then they don't see any type of changes or the things they things that, how districts is like things that they need, but again, the fires are there, but they're not being put out, and then it's like, oh, here you come in your car right in our community, and you didn't even put the fires out, so it's like I can understand that, it's true, and it also helps students to build a connection with their teacher. It
they
really
I've I've seen teachers, and usually I work at a Title I school. So yeah, I think I'm a sucker for a sucker for the challenge. But I've seen teachers like crying every day. I've seen teachers walking out of buildings, and I'm like, why you come back in here every day? There are schools that you would be successful at. You get what I'm saying? So I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. So what would you say is something that people misunderstand about being a special education educator the most?
um I think it's one of the things is for all educators. Number one, my biggest thing is building relationships. Like you have to do that. And a lot of teachers don't take the time out to do that at the beginning of the school year. So I think that's one thing that's misunderstood. But the second thing would probably be, um, we have to meet these kids where they are. I know there is a standard that leadership puts in place. I know there's a standard that the Department of Education puts in place for us to follow, but these kids need something else.
Mm,
So the question is, are you going in there just to do a job, or are you going in there to change somebody's life?
yeah.
So I think that's the biggest misunderstanding why we don't have a great success rate with sped kids, is because we're not giving these kids what they need.
Mm, yeah, you hit that on the nail. You really hit that on the nail, it's very complex because every kid needs something different, and oftentimes we have that cookie cutter approach. Well, we're gonna do this for everybody. Everybody's gonna get the same thing, and I'm like, but everybody don't need the same thing. And
Mm.
what you did for the class before them is something different for this class that's coming in, and a lot of admin don't get that. Like, I'm like, the kids that are coming in now, they're completely different from the kids that moved on to the next grade already. They're completely different. We need a whole different approach. It's not the same, and we can't approach them the same way. um you hit that on the nail. That was you really hit that. Do you have any, like, I want to say, I don't want to just say successful, but like any accomplishments that you had in a classroom that you would like to share, like stories with a student or a teacher that you would like to share, that was just, it might have been a funny story, or it might have been one of those, you know what? Oh my God, it finally clicked this day and the student finally got it or whatever. Do you have any of those that you would like to share?
So one of my biggest in Virginia, we have the standards of learning assessment every year. And when I tell you that is not an easy assessment for a lot of kids, especially for SPED kids. Usually SPED kids don't pass. It's just what it is. And so one year, I think it was about 3 years ago, I had about I think it was 4 or 5 kids in my language arts class to pass.
Mm,
The year after that, we ended up, no, when the pandemic came and we switched over to making sure they did a growth assessment, making sure they grew from one year to the other. I also had a lot of kids that made a lot of gains. So I say that was a big accomplishment for me, because I usually don't look for that. That's not one of my goals in the year, that you pass the SOL. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal is that you leave out of here and you can read.
Yes.
I need you to be able to read. And so I do what I need to do throughout the year to make sure that happens. And lo and behold, you were able to make gains on this test that I and a lot of other people don't think that you can probably make gains on.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
was a big accomplishment for me. Another thing is about co-teaching is another problem in SPED. Just to let, but
That's where you're like the second or third person to say that. Like,
it's
yeah.
horrible. Like, it's a horror story, and that's a whole nother, like, you can do a whole nother series on that.
But you know what?
I got a lot to say.
You definitely have to. I'll say with co-teaching, like admin, you really have to see who can work together and give training and coaching on that, because a lot of times you see the same model being presented, one teach, one assist. And I'm like, no, like that's one of the practice, that's one of the models, but it's like when you use it all the time, students gonna think the other teacher is an aide, is an assistant.
Or when
They're
I
not
tell
gonna
you,
respect
I was that teacher that if I saw a problem, I'm gonna tell you. So I'm like, listen, y'all need to do some training on co-teaching, because
them.
ed teachers are struggling. The general ed teachers are having an issue, like, and our kids aren't learning.
Mm-hmm.
So their grand idea of doing that was to make a video. Like, why are we sitting here watching them? You cannot teach co-teaching with a video. So,
No.
I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like, I don't know what to tell you all. But when I tell you I have mastered co-teaching, because I have mastered building relationships.
Mm-hmm. And that's
For
part of it.
those
Huge.
2 weeks of pre-service, I'm getting to know you. I'm filling you out. Like,
And that
I
should be even one of the first things you do in your co-teaching like training. Get to know your teacher. Even if you already know them, you may not know them as a teacher, you know what
right.
I mean, or what their style is and what how they like to do things and how they like, you know what I mean, like you really need to get to know your colleague and their styles, because if you don't, your students will pick up so fast. Miss so and so, Miss Clayton and Miss Bashir don't like each other. They don't like each other,
So
or they
my
may try to put one against the other.
girl, well, one of my best stories, he's the co-founder of the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
We came into the middle school, we taught it together, about, what was it, 4 years ago. He came from North Carolina. And so I'm sitting back doing pre-service and I'm filling him out, and I'm just like, okay, because he's a dude, and I'm just like, I haven't worked with a dude before as a co-teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, I don't know if this is going to be easy or what. But when I tell you, I sat back for like the first 3 months of school and I watched his style. I watched and see what he needed, what he was good at, how he did things. And by like December, I had him figured out. So what I did not do is go in there and say, hey, this is who I am. This is how I do things. This is what I'm going to do in your class. I sat back and I watched him first. And
Mm-hmm.
then I said, okay, this is how I can contribute. This is how I can help. What do you think about these things? And when we start to have conversations, that's when everything just like flourished. So
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't great at breaking things down to its least common denominator for kids. Mind you, not just sped kids need that. So he was in there. He's great at teaching reading and writing. However, he's used to doing it on grade level.
Mm-hmm.
So I was that teacher that can say, oh, he would teach it. He would teach the content. And then I would come behind him and break it down for the class, the
Mm-hmm.
entire class.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned like he does lesson plans at 5 o'clock in the morning when he gets to school. He wasn't that teacher that did it a week before. And he's not typing his lesson plans. He's writing it with pen and using a notebook. Those were things that I had to learn about him. And then I'm like, okay,
Uh-huh.
how can I adjust? How can I, fit in to make sure?
Like, where do you fit in? Right,
So it's
right,
like
right. And those are, I think.
I'm coming in here, I'm on the same level as you, and this is what we're gonna know. Because at the end of the day, I get the
You're
same.
gonna be next.
I probably get more than you. So what I'm not gonna
Mhm.
do is trying to come in here and take over what you're supposed to do too.
Right, and I think that's something that some gen ed teachers have, like, "Oh, this is my class, and this is da da da," and it's like, you gotta combat that even, like, when you first get started. I wanna say my last co-teaching experience, she was new. So, of course, I was just like, I just made sure to validate her so that way she didn't feel like I'm taking over things and I'm doing things. I'm just like, oh, okay. So what is your teaching style like? You know what I mean? Because it was beginning. We actually went out to lunch. We met up like during end service, you got to lunch. I'm like, oh, would you like to catch up for lunch? And we did that. We talked. She got to know me a little bit. I got to know her a little bit. And when we started teaching, because we did English, we was seventh grade. She again did the content. Of course, I was way better at explaining things. She was better at the grammar part, and I was better at when it was like time for like reviews and when it was time for like projects,
Mm-hmm.
breaking everything down so you clearly know what you have to do. And then I remember she used the exact same materials that I used in my learning support class, and she would just add the rigor to it. Like she would remove stuff from what I did, but I was just like, you can take, I'm like, we can use, and some of these we can use in a classroom too. And so we will always like certain papers I would pass out and certain papers she would pass out because we had differentiated like graphic organizers and things like that. And then even when it was an IEP coming up and we had to give the input, because I always CC'd her on the input. I remember one time I had like 6 during the same week, and I was like, could you please help me? She knocked out 3 for me because we had did them together. Like I used to always say, oh, look at so-and-so, let me know if I left anything off or whatever. She could do it. Like I didn't have to do it. She could do it. And when I left, she was just like, "Oh my God, Jamila, I wish you were back here." Like, oh my God. She was just saying how she was just overwhelmed because the person that came after me, she was just like, she keeps saying she don't know. And I said, well, don't just take, I don't know. Like sit down, show her what she can do because I said you can't make it through the year like that. But she appreciated that. Like I didn't like overpower her or anything. Like hey, she knew, that doesn't mean she don't know nothing. That doesn't mean like, she doesn't, not know anything. She knows something because she's hired here to teach this content. And I think that's something else that um we don't take into account too, like validating new teachers. They bring something, they're bringing something to the table as well. And we don't gotta exclude them like, well, no, you don't really know, blah, 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 blah. But it's like,
This
it's again
the
what you
whole
said.
the whole new teacher program that school systems do is lacking in itself, and it's not just for sped. It's like they provide them with these mentors and their coaches, and I'm like, yo, y'all have all this money to give these people and they don't do anything. Like why are your teachers calling me?
Mm-hmm.
You have a coach, you have
Mm-hmm.
a mentor, a building mentor, and you're
Mm-hmm.
still calling me. That's a problem. I'm gonna need y'all school systems to pay me instead because
Right.
something isn't right.
Right. And then it's like someone who hasn't been in the classroom and God knows how long. And I'm like, okay, well, how effective is that going to be?
And
Like, how effective is that going to be?
39 years old. I have teachers 50, 60. Clayton, what do I say to this lady about blah blah blah? Or I need to pull my kids out. What do you think she? And I'm coaching them in how to approach. I'm 39,
Mhm.
and I'm telling you, giving you advice on how to do things, and I'm just like, this cannot keep happening.
Mhm.
And I know you have time to do things because you spend like days and meetings.
Mhm.
Like you have meetings for just meetings on meetings on meetings.
For the meeting.
I'm just like, I know you have enough time to come and sit with these teachers and help them out once out of the week.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah.
So what would you say is something you wish you knew then when you first started that you know now?
Did
Oh,
I? Okay. I'm sorry. I
okay.
gotta. Whew, that's a loaded question. Um, I wish I knew myself more then than I know myself now, but that's a growth process. I do wish that I knew that the end goal of the school system wasn't to make sure we produce sustainable students. Um, if I would have known that then, I probably wouldn't have gotten into education.
Mm. Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, and then another thing is a lot of times we go into certain fields or even certain schools because of lack that we have within ourselves, and we deal with a lot of stuff, a lot of toxic things because of what we lack within ourselves. And the more we grow, the more we realize that this isn't for me. This isn't what God intended for living life abundantly here on earth. Like
Mhm.
this ain't it. So I think if I would have knew that then, and then more about myself, I probably would not have gone into that field.
Well, I appreciate your truth and your transparency regarding that. Yeah, I think if my little sister wasn't in my life, I would not have. I didn't want to go into education, period. But like, yeah, definitely. I know if I didn't have my sister in my life, I would not have, and I probably would have gone in a completely different direction if it wasn't for my sister.
There are a lot of ways we can impact the community outside of the public school system, and I think if we knew more about that, that will probably been another reason why I would not have went into the school system. But it's just everything happens for a reason, and I'm not saying me being a teacher was a mistake.
Hmm.
I think that I probably would not have stayed as long.
Yeah, I can understand that. So,
Yeah.
with all that, what advice would you give someone who is just starting out in the field of special education? What is some advice you would give them?
Self-care is number one. I know a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people say, take care of yourself, blah, blah, blah. I am telling you, and I tell every teacher, when the bell rings and those students leave, you leave. Do not take any work home. Do not write an IEP at home. They pay you to work 9 to 5. That's it. If you can't get it done within 9 to 5, you go back and start on it the next day. They will
Save
not
some
fire
money.
you.
Save it
They're
for
not
tomorrow.
gonna fire you. So let's just normalize that they will not fire you. They might say something to you. They might not like it, but don't let them put that pressure on you to do things like that. That was one
Mhm.
mistake I made, like that people pleasing mentality. I need to
Mm.
do this. I need to get it done. Someone's not going to be pleased. No, they'll be all right. So take care of yourself. Take off work. Like you get leave days every month. Like
Mental health day.
my mom has been in the school system almost 30 years. She's about to retire. And I promise you, she got like 2 to 3 years of leave on her books.
That's
And
how
I'm
my
like,
dad. That's how my dad was. He didn't work in the school system. He worked for the housing authority. They had to make him take his vacation. I'm like, what is the matter with you?
it
Take your
was,
days.
yeah, it wasn't until I got back from when we had a pandemic shutdown or whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I ain't going to work. I started to take off like 1 or 2 days a month. No one died. Your kids we were still there. They still learned, but it's just like take off work. Like it's
And
not
don't
that
let
serious.
them pressure you if you take off a day. Because some will do that. They're like, oh, you can't do Friday or Monday.
I can't come today. My kids. And well, what about your kids? They'll be all right. And so another thing would be teach yourself. Teach yourself. Go online. Go study the law. Go look at some trainings. You're a consultant. Contact Jamila. Like she knows what she's doing.
Thank you.
Get some help outside of the school system because the school system's not going to tell you the truth.
And they will. And what I see is with some of them, it's like, oh no, we have everything we need. I'm like, stop lying. No, you don't. Do you want me to pull up the news clip where I saw you?
That in a meeting, and I had to listen to my director of SPED tell a table full of people that they provided a certain training to me. And all I wanted to say is, girl, you are lying. I wanted to say that straight up out my mouth. And I'm just like, they don't do that. But politics will have them thinking like we doing everything we can for these teachers, and you're not. So the only way you're going to be successful is to like teach yourself and just build those relationships with other teachers, with people outside your building, your students, your parents. Your parents are one of your greatest allies.
Yes.
So yeah, those are the things I would probably tell teachers. But my number one thing is take care of yourself, man. There's so many people dying because of stress, getting sick. Don't let that happen to you, because at the end of the day, it is a job.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alicia, for coming on to the Their Voices Matter series. I greatly appreciate it. So once again, let people know who you are, where you are located, and what it is you do, and where they can follow you.
Okay, I'm Alicia Clayton. I am located in Virginia Beach, Virginia. My website is www.educatethevillage.com. We're on Facebook as The Village Inc. and on Instagram as The Village Inc. Any educational services you may need for children, parents, teachers, contact us. We're here to help. We're here to make sure people get what they need. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you. All right, so this was the final episode in the Their Voices Matter series for the month of March. I can't believe it went by so fast. So, as always, if you are catching this on a replay, please put hashtag replay in the comments so we know that you are watching this on the replay. And I am Jamila, aka the IEP Coach. I am the owner of the IEP Coach LLC. We help principals keep their special education teachers from leaving the field because we provide training and coaching that is tailored to their needs, so they are more likely to stay. A lot of SPED teachers, they want to be valued, they want to be heard, and they want the time to do their work so that you don't get sued, okay? So stop playing and get me in your schools, all right? You can follow me at the IEP Coach LLC on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And our website is www.theiepcoachllc.com. And also keep a lookout because we are relaunching our Master IEP course. So keep a lookout on all of our pages for that. And until next time, stay safe and stay blessed. We'll see you.